great to see you because we spent a lot of time speaking on the phone over lockdown. Just great to see you face to face.
I think a lot of people are probably surprised I'm still alive. The only good thing is if I was dead, it would have made the papers. So.
Peter, you're a legend up here, and I think everybody in the crowd would agree. 100%. Oh. You can't change history, and this man is the best player I've ever seen in a black and white shirt. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Let's go back though to the very start, Peter. When did you first kick a football? Where did you start off at?
Yeah, it was definitely Forest Hall. Yeah. So I lived in what was classed as Benton, but it was just at the bottom of Forest Hall, if you like. And Forest Hall didn't have a team at the time, but then they created a team under 11s or whatever. And luckily I was good enough to get in that team. And then from there just got better and better. I went all over really, just playing football. You know, used to walk to the boys' club from Forest Hall down Station Road at Wallsend, and used to go there every night, and it was just kicking the ball about is the best thing in the world, and I really mean that. So obviously there's a lot of brilliant sports, but as we all know, kicking the football, when you can kick in the right direction, is pretty good.
Should have showed Steve Bruce.
To be fair to Steve Bruce, and I will stick up for Steve Bruce, doesn't buy the players. He did not choose the players. So I hope, and I know we're not talking about this, but I hope Eddie Howe gets to pick his own players. I really mean that. So it's nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me, but the manager should pick his own players. Do you think Pep Guardiola let somebody pick his players? Not a chance.
Good point. Okay, so you're starting off in the back streets of Newcastle. You know, you progress into the boys' club. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so you go to Wallsend, and the good thing is, as daft as it sounds, Steve, in them days, you didn't have to pay. When the kids go now, go to academies and obviously boys' clubs and whatever, the parents have to pay £30 a month. Some are more than that. You know, which when you say £30 a month, which basically is £1 a day, doesn't sound a lot. But to be fair to the kids, you know, the parents obviously come up with the money, and nowadays you didn't have to. And if I'd have had to get 30 quid a month off my parents, I'd never have been a player because we couldn't have afforded it. So I'm not embarrassed. It was what it was. We lived in a council house, but I wouldn't swap it. I really wouldn't. I still drive past it, and my kids are sick of me telling me where I used to live and all that. But as you say, history, Steve, you know, it's part of my life. You know, Terry Mitchell now with Concert. Terry and I used to play on the same field, and he used to bring the ball, so it was perfect. Honestly, it really was. I wouldn't swap a day of my upbringing. I really mean it. So everything, obviously, in reality, just moves on to another level. Now, when you look at football now, you know, I'm not sure you'll get the chance to interview, imagine a Carlisle or a...
Julian.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if he understands the language yet, to be fair. But the thing I would say in his defence, Steve, and you'll know better than me because you go to the games, works his socks off. And that's all I ever did. Kenny Wharton, Wes Saunders, Chris Waddle, that's all we ever did. And if you do that, you get respect. And I think, to be fair to him, to the Newcastle public that's in the ground, I think they really respect him. I really do. So they're on social media, people hammer him, but that's the world we're in. But as a footballer and as a person, in terms of the effort, he's somebody that if somebody got a hold of him, they could make him a better player. I really mean that.
When you were at the boys' club, what position were you playing?
To be fair, in them days, Steve, you were just happy to play. I was probably playing more as a winger. Obviously not a winger, but supposed to be a winger. But no, it was just one of them things where you just literally, I'll go back to my life, if you like, there wasn't coaching. You know, there wasn't like, stop, stand still, I'll show you where you should be. They just trusted you to do what you should do, you know what I mean? If you made a mistake, they might shout at you, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, you know. And it was a brilliant experience. So, you know, going to the boys' club every night, you know, walking 3 mile there and 3 mile back, kicking me ball all the way there and all the way back. And that's what probably helped me be the player I was, in the sense that Like, I was able to use both feet, you know, where there was no academies in them days. I look at Paul Dummett now, who in one sense has had a brilliant career, but he's 30-year-old now and still can't use his right foot. And I find that incredible. And it's not a criticism, it's a fact of life. You know, when you look at it, if you're in an academy, so you don't need a coach to take you every day, you're in there all day, the facilities are there, just get a ball, go and bounce it against the wall, which is what I did when I was a kid. You know, I just look, so if you're Lionel Messi, you don't need to have a good right foot. If you're Cristiano Ronaldo, you don't have to have a good left foot. But if you're a normal player, you need to work on that. You know, I look at a lot of the players in Newcastle's first team now, can't use both feet. And I find that really, really, because most of them, if not all of them, will have come through academy somewhere.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where, but that is the basic thing that you should always be able to do.
Did you always want to be a footballer?
Never ever thought I would get to where I got to. Always wanted to play the game, but you know, I wasn't good enough as a 16-year-old, so I had to go and work in a factory. You know, I was a labourer. My job, so I lived in Forest Hall, as I said, at the bottom of Forest Hall. Used to work in Westmoor, and you'll know it just by the chippy under the bridge. So I used to work there, and but every day my brother worked on the same site but a different company, and we used to walk every day. And I took my ball, and going over the bridge, the ones that know where the Flying Scotsman is, you have to go over the bridge. But I never ever picked my ball up. And always kicked it, so kick it over the stairs. Probably caused a few crashes on the roads, but to be fair, it got to the stage without being big-headed or cocky, because I wasn't a player then. People used to beep, but I think it was being nice, as in here he goes again, but it might have been because I was causing chaos, but it was a brilliant experience, and as I say, I lived in Westmoor, worked in Westmoor, and the fish shop that I'm talking about. So on a morning, my job, so I was a labourer, basically a labourer. I had to clean the lathes and clean the machine. It was a ship valve company that I was working for, Young and Cunningham. And so at 9 o'clock, I used to have to go around and get the order for all the men, and, you know, what they wanted. Did they want a sandwich, you know, on a morning, or did they want, you know, something, nothing healthy in them days, but, you know, cigarettes, whatever. So I do that, and then take them all back, and then have a 10 o'clock break. And then after that, I then go again to get the fish and chips. And to be fair, it was fantastic, because I was eating half the chips and that was it. but when they're wrapped up, nobody knows, do they? You know, so I have to say it. And to be fair, I eat fish and chips almost every day now. I honestly, I really do. It is what it is. I'm 60-year-old. I don't need to worry anymore.
So you're kicking the ball on the way there. Were you still playing football at that time?
Absolutely.
Who were you playing for?
I was playing for Wallsend. I went to Wallsend, and basically it was like Brucey was in the same squad as me, in the same team, and loved everything about me. He used to kick shit out of me, to be but in them days you could kick shit out of people. It didn't matter, you know. Nobody got offended if you tackled them or whatever, you know. And I remember when we played against each other, I was at Carlisle eventually, and then obviously he was at Gillingham. We played against each other, and we played at Brunton Park. I got carried off. He put me on a stretcher. He absolutely snapped me in half. But to be fair, he was just, without being horrible, and I love him a bit, too slow at the time. You know, he just obviously hit me as I was probably meant to be going away from him, but it was the only way he was going to stop me. So, but I had to get carried off first time on a stretcher, and thankfully I never had to go on another one. I had a couple of fractured cheekbones, as you can see when you look at me, but I never had to worry about it. It was a brilliant thing. But I went to Gillingham on trial, and he was there. Obviously he'd already made the step up, if you like, and I wasn't good enough. I was there for a week, and the manager said to me, he said, unfortunately you're not good enough, but it is what it is. So I'd go back to the factory, and the fellas in the factory would say, they'd say to me, oh, you failed again, you're rubbish, you got no chance, pack in, whatever. And then so I went to Oxford, failed again. Do us a favour, mate, stop taking pictures. Seriously. So failed again, ultimately wasn't good enough. Jim Smith was the manager at Oxford, never got to meet him. So somebody else makes the decision. Then I went to Cambridge, and wasn't good enough. No, it was what it was. And and went to Burnley. Harry Potts was the manager for the older people in the room. You know, wasn't good enough, and just kept going and going. And all these people in the factory, every time I went back after a week away, just pack in, son, you're rubbish. You've got no chance in there. They're just banter, you know, and it was banter, to be fair. And then eventually, I come in and I tell them I'm going to sign for Carlisle. And they went, fucking, you're still useless. But to be fair, I wasn't offended. It's what it was, and I loved every minute of it. I really did. Like going in every morning, doing the chores, whatever, picking up the stuff off the floor. It didn't bother me.
Who was the gaffer down there?
The gaffer at Carlisle, Bob Moncur. I spoke to him the other day. Obviously, you saw him yesterday, Steve. But
How old were you then?
when I met Bob Moncur,
How old Carlisle?
18.
18.
So I played in a friendly for, you'll obviously know the pitch at Blue Star at the time, which obviously is at the airport now. You know, that's where they played. And I played in a friendly. Carlisle United played against, obviously, Blue Star. Paul Dixon, who you'll have heard on the radio, and you'll know he was playing for Blue Star then. And Bob Moncur was playing as a sweeper for Carlisle Reserves. And I played in the game. We won 3-2. I managed to score a goal, make the other two. And and most of you will know or have heard of the Diamond, the pub. Yeah. And I've only ever been in there twice. And I really mean that. I live probably a mile away from it, but honestly, twice I've been into it. So that was the first time. And you might know the second one was when Deck and, obviously Ant and Deck, but Deck's the one, I'm friends with both of them, but I say Deck first. I know Ant's always first or he's always on the late or the right. But to be fair, you know, so went there with obviously Carlisle, and Bob Moncur said to me, he said, we're going to sign you. We're going to give you £30 a week. I was on £15 at the factory. You know, so I thought I'd won the pools, to be fair. So I went £30 a week, and then within a month, I got in the first team, was starting to be in the first team on a regular basis. And then he called me in, and I was on a 2-year contract initially for 30 quid a week. Called me in, and he said, we're going to give you a 4-year contract, 60 quid a week. Didn't even think about it, didn't even think like, wow, why is he doing that? Oh, that's a lot of money or whatever. Just signed, and then when I went in the next day and it was in the local paper that I'd signed a contract, doubled my wages. All the players within the dressing room, like a Bobby Parker, you know, Keith Houch, you know, you remember with Blythe, he was part of that group. They all said to me, you're stupid. I said, what do you mean I'm stupid? They said, well, he's give you 60 quid a week, but he obviously knows you're worth more than 60 quid a week. I said, I don't care. I'm not here for the money. I said, the thing that he gave me that I want more than anything is a guarantee that I'm going to be here 4 years. And 4 years at that time for me was like unbelievable. I just wanted to play football every day. And so in them days, used to get the train across to Carlisle. And it took 2 hours in them days. You know, it takes about 50 minutes now if you get the right train. But it took 2 hours in them days, but I couldn't drive. So it's one of them things. So anyway, I used to get a train on the morning and go over. And then I only used to come home on a weekend. So I was in digs with a young lad called Cliffy Thompson, who was a lovely kid, was never going to be a player because he was just a nutcase. But not a bad lad, and I don't mean that, but he just football was like a second thing in his life rather than the first. Anyway, so I played for the reserves when the first team were down at Plymouth on the first day of that season. I've only been there a month. And so Camille, obviously Bob Moncur's wife, I was living with them. So when I first went over, like a month earlier, I was in digs. But the digs were shocking, and I really mean shocking. So the people were nice, but the lady who cooked the food was horrific. And I'm fussy, so I'm not making excuses, but I can't do with burnt peas. That's not possible. So that was the final straw. And so Bob said, come and live with me and Camille. So I went and lived with them. And he was on his way down to Plymouth on the Friday for the game the next day with the first team. And I was meant to play on the Saturday against Wrexham at Brunton Park. And so Camille cooked me a steak, before the game, which is what players had in them days. I'm not sure I ever had a steak before I was 18, so it was amazing. She really looked after me and took me to the game. And so I was lucky, I scored a hat-trick. We beat Wrexham 5-2. And so I was told before the Wrexham game that I could go home for the weekend. So she put me on the train on the Saturday night. The first team had lost at Plymouth 1-0. And so I went home, and I was meant to come back on the Tuesday morning because they were playing Blackburn on Tuesday night. And I got a telegram, which I didn't know what a telegram was, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. So I get a telegram because we didn't have a phone, and I'm not embarrassed. It's what it was. So get a telegram, and on the telegram on a Sunday morning, it says report for training tomorrow, as in Monday. Bob will pick you up at the station at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And so got the train back. Didn't know why, and I'm not trying to be clever. I didn't have a clue. So I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I scored a hat-trick the day before, so it couldn't be bad news. So anyway, he picked me up at the station, and he said, "Do you know why I brought you back?" And I didn't have a clue, really. He said, "You're going to play on Tuesday against Blackburn." He said, "Now your problem is, how are you going to tell your parents?" Because I had to send a telegram. Didn't have a phone. No mobiles. What are you supposed to do? So he organised, sent a telegram, and they came across for the game, which was obviously brilliant for them. We beat Blackburn. Howard Kendall was the player manager of Blackburn at the time. Duncan McKenzie was playing. You know, Derek Fazackerley, who obviously you'll know as a coach at Newcastle, he was playing. Glenn Keeley, who obviously played for Newcastle, he was playing. And great news, they were all shit on the night. And, and we beat them, but after 2 minutes of the game, sounds big-headed this, but I nutmegged Howard Kendall. But not to be clever. So anytime I ever nutmegged anybody in my life, and I feel I did it quite a lot, I never did it to take the piss. And I really mean that. It was the best thing to do at the time, whether you pass it through somebody's legs or you get it on the other side. It's what I did. I thought it was good and it was right. And he said to me after 2 minutes, he said, "You do that again, break your fucking leg." So you can imagine I never did it again that game. But it's quite funny. It's quite funny because obviously when I went to sign for Everton, he was the manager. And he said to me, the first thing he said to me, he said, "I see you're still nutmegging people." He said, "Luckily I'm finished now." But he was a brilliant man. He really was a brilliant man. But so the chance to go and do that for Carlisle was just amazing. And then I met my missus there. You know, she was Bob Moncur's secretary, which would be like a PA now if you're being posh. But she was the secretary. She used to do all the match sheets, if you like, the team sheets that you put out to the press or whatever. Anyway, so I met her there. As I mentioned, little Cliffy Thompson. When I got in the first team, I didn't have to do any jobs. Before I got in the first team, I had to do all the jobs. But when I got in the first team, I didn't have to do the jobs. But I couldn't get home because obviously Bob's the manager and he stays till 4 or 5 o'clock or whatever. So I couldn't get back to his house. He lived about 3-4 miles away. So anyway, so I had to wait for him. So that's how I met Sandra. She was his PA, as I say. I was just sat in reception because I wasn't allowed to help Cliffy. Basically, I just had to rest and relax. And then I met her, and to be fair, in April just gone, we've been married 40 years. So,
well done.
Yeah, done well. So I don't know how she's managed. It's been all right for me, but no, but
You had a great time with Carlisle. Tell us about Vancouver. How on earth did you end up out there?
yeah. So we played Mansfield at home in the FA Cup, and their scout, a man called Tony Waiters, who was a brilliant goalkeeper of his era, if you like. He came to watch the game. He played Mansfield, as I say, at Brunton Park, and this lad Dave Penny, who was a left winger, they came to watch him, and I imagine I didn't know that at the time, but I couldn't even tell you how good he was on the day, but obviously not great. And then we won 3-0, and I played well, as big-headed as that sounds. And Tony Waiters went back to Johnny Giles and he said, "We need to have a look at this kid Beardsley." He said, "He looks like he's a player." So a month later, we were playing down at Brentford in the Road Stadium. And Ron Harris was, Chopper Harris as he was known, was kicking shit out of me all day. And but again, it wasn't like something you got offended with. Like, if I'd have had the brain or the nous, I could have kicked him back, you know. And I don't mean like when everybody's watching, but that's what it was. And he kicked shit out of me. And Johnny Giles was at the game because they were staying at Bisham Abbey for their pre-season, if you like. They always came to Britain. And he was at the game, and he came to me after the game. He said, "I think we're going to try and buy you." And to be fair, I didn't even know who he was manager of. And I said, "What do you mean you're going to try and buy me?" He said, "Well, I'm part of Vancouver Whitecaps." Never heard of them, didn't know where the fuck they were. I didn't know where Vancouver was. I live in Newcastle, man. You know? Tell me, did any of you know where Vancouver was when you were fucking 18? No. See, I'm not as thick as you thought, am I? So the facts are, I didn't have a clue where it was, and I really mean that, so I'm not negative about it, but what a place. If you could get to go, and I mean now in your life, put it on your list, and I really mean that. It was a brilliant place. Sandra and I had only been 4 days married when we left to go, and it was just an unbelievable experience, and I really mean that. Johnny Giles was a brilliant manager, brilliant coach. You know, not every day did you do something special that he was pleased with. Some days he wasn't. So we played in Seattle, played in the King Dome. You'll have heard of the King Dome. It's closed in, so there's no wind, there's nothing that can affect it. So we're playing in the King Dome. And in them days, the Americans were ahead of us in the sense of, you look at the referee putting the board up now, 14's coming off, 15's going on. The electronic boards, they had them in America in the late 70s. So anyway, the number goes up at Seattle. I'm wearing number 13, which was my choice. Number 13 was my favourite number. So number 13 goes up on the board, and I'm thinking, and big-headed as it sounds, who's number 13 for Seattle? And I honestly thought that. I thought, you know. And then I'm looking around and I'm thinking, fucking hell, they haven't got a number 13. It must be me. And so I come over, and obviously I get subbed, but there was none of this giving you hugs and all that bullshit. It was like, sit down, you're fucking hopeless. Like, so I sit down, and to be fair, not offended, and I'm really not offended, it is what it is. So I sat down, and Johnny Giles is watching the game, and there's only 2 minutes to go before half time. You know, you think it's fucking 70 minutes, and I'm still off in the first half. So anyway, takes me off, and like, so after about 2 or 3 minutes, they put the board up, 3 minutes injury time. He walks over to me, and he said, do you know why I took you off? And without being clever, I didn't expect the question, didn't know what to say. I said, no, not really. He said, you were shit. And so I had the 2 or 3 minutes that I said were left in the half to analyse it in my brain. He was right, I was shit. But to be fair, like, it wasn't one of them things that you thought, no, that's not very nice. It's a fact. If you look at yourself, most of the time now, if a player comes off, if it's De Bruyne, or if it's Phil Foden or whatever, they come off because he's given them a rest. But most other players are vulnerable to being subbed. But you see them coming off, and like, I saw Grealish the other week getting brought off by Pep, and he's having a little strop. Like, at the end of the day, it is what it is, you know, and you know, in them days, you know, the sad thing was there was only one sub, so you couldn't even go back on. You know, it was like a weird world that we lived in then. Now there's 25 subs, I think. Yeah. When I looked in Europe the other day, they've all got 12 subs. Like, do me a favour, you've got 23 players that you can play.
Back home, yeah. We were in heaven because we got Kevin first time round. Kevin Keegan signed for Newcastle. Infamous photo of him coming down the airplane steps, freezing cold in Newcastle, but he changed this club for the first time as a player. And you were lucky enough to join that. How did the move to Newcastle come about?
To be fair, amazing, Stephen. I really mean that. So I love Vancouver, and I could have stayed there without even thinking about it for the rest of my life. If nobody had knocked on the door and tried to buy me, I'd have been happy there. And I really mean that. I love the place, everything about it, you know. Every year you were able to bring your family out, you know, it was all paid for, and bring the family of your wife or whatever. Honestly, it was a brilliant place. We had so many English players, British players, whatever you want to call them. So Johnny Giles was the manager. We had David Harvey, who was the goalkeeper. We had John Wilde, we had Roger Kenyon, we had Peter Lorimer, Terry Yorath, Jimmy Holmes, Dave Thomas, Ray Hankin, Alan Taylor. We had an unbelievable squad of players. But I was 10 years younger than all of them, and I don't mean that in a cocky way. I was a kid compared to them. And it was a brilliant experience. But then, so we all had sponsored cars. So everyone, so nobody had a big flash car and somebody else had a shit car. We all had the same. There were Ford Links, they were called. And to be fair, they weren't very big, but there was only Sandra and I. Some of them had kids, as in Peter Lorimer had his kids, Dave Thomas had his kids. Couldn't fit the kids in, you know, and I don't mean that in a horrible way. They had 3 or 4 kids, couldn't fit them in. But they still weren't allowed to have a different car. They had to have the same car and basically leave some of their kids behind if they needed it. And that's the way it was. But anyway, so we all had our Whitecaps badge on the doors of the cars. So we all had the same. They went up in like sort of number order in terms of the registration. So anyway, I get a phone call, bearing in mind the time it was like 1 o'clock in the morning in England. I get a phone call from Arthur Cox. And in them days, the Americans, the Canadians, they were ahead in the sense that there was mobile phones in the 80s. Yeah, I wasn't here, but in them days there was. So anyway, I had a brick, and you'll remember the brick, some of you will in here. I had one of them bricks, and when you left your car, you had to take the fucking brick with you, because honestly, if you left it in the car, you'd never see it again, because it was so obvious. So anyway, my phone goes, and I think there's a few Whitecap cars in the car park, so they're in the shopping mall as I was. It's got to be one of them. And so anyway, this fella rings up, and he says, Arthur Cox. I said, fuck off. He went, no, it's Arthur Cox. And I said, fuck off, put the phone down. And then 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, whatever, he rings back. And he said, I don't know what's going on in terms of your brain or whatever. He said, but this is Arthur Cox, right? He said, I don't know if you've ever heard me speak before. And I hadn't. And I'm not embarrassed to say that, so. You know, he'd been at Chesterfield before he came to Newcastle. Now you could hear any person in the world. You know, it's just a different world, but that's not a problem. Anyway, so he said, when I eventually understood it was him and believed him, he said, I want to sign you for Newcastle. I've spoken to Vancouver. They're happy for you to come. The deal's done. He said, how much do you get a week? And I said, £400 a week. And he said, £400. You could hear his brain almost ticking. He said, I'll give you £300 a week. and to be fair, as naive as I was, like, you couldn't imagine if, say, I don't know, it doesn't matter who it is, but if a Newcastle player was on £4,000 and he was going to move tomorrow to somewhere bigger and better, if you like, and they said, we'll give you £5,000, he'd still tell them where to go. You know what I mean? It's like a different world. But anyway, so we said, we'll give you £300 a week. And I'm thinking, and he can almost hear me brain thing. And then he said to me, he said, but you're going to be playing alongside Kevin Keegan. And then he said, that's got to be worth £100. So, and to be fair, he was right. And I came back for £300 a week. But to be fair, I was coming. Yeah. It's nice when people think, oh, that's good, but it was great because I was coming home, you know, and I really mean that. It couldn't have been better. And I knew Arthur had a way of playing in the sense of when I got here, I knew what he wanted to do in terms of me and Kevin, Wadler, Terry Mack, Kenny Wharton. You know, we had a really, really good squad of players. Anyway, so when I come back, Sandra and I, we arrive into Heathrow. Excuse me. We then get the shuttle up to Newcastle. Obviously, that's what it was called in them days, the shuttle. So anyway, we're on a plane on a Monday night coming up from London, and on the same plane is Kevin Keegan. And you all know he lived in Southampton, and I'm not trying to be clever there. What I mean is, so he never did Mondays at Newcastle while I was there. and again, I'm not being negative, but we never played midweek. We very rarely played midweek because we were very rarely left in the fucking cup. And in them days, you played basically Saturday. Not even Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Saturday. So anyway, Kevin didn't train on a Monday, and that's not a negative. So he catches the plane up on a Tuesday. So Sandra and I are on the same plane, and like we obviously are. Wow, we're like gobsmacked. Kevin Keegan's on the same flight. Like that was obviously normal to him, but to Sandra and I, and like so, I'm not going to speak to him. I'm not in a position to speak to him. I'll see him tomorrow, which obviously I knew I'd see him tomorrow. But so anyway, somebody, and I haven't got a clue who, somebody had obviously told him who I was, because he wouldn't have known otherwise. And I'm not being horrible. I'm not offended. Like he would never have seen me kick a ball until the very next day. And he said, oh, well, as we were getting off, he'd come to see me and he said, I'm going to be seeing you tomorrow. He said, I hope you're good. He said, Arthur Cox has told me loads of good things about you. He said, you better prove them right. So anyway, now I'm shitting myself. We going back to the county hotel, which is where Sandra and I stayed, opposite the station. We stayed in there for about 6-7 months. And it was handy because you could like get everywhere from there in terms of she could go and shop, and I really mean that in a nice way, and I could get to Benwell very easily. So anyway, get to Benwell first day, and as I drive in the gate, Arthur had come to pick me up, driving the gate, like Arthur's like beeping the horn. I'm like, weird this. So then Terry Mack and KK come out, and they're like cheering and like, wow. They obviously set it up, and like they're cheering as though like, oh, this fanfare and all that. And you maybe heard Kevin tell the story at a different time. They thought they were getting somebody like Kenny Dalglish. He ended up with fucking me, and so he wasn't best pleased at the time. At the time, he wasn't best pleased. So anyway, but they came out, you know, like obviously, basically like a fanfare as a drive-in. So anyway. So after about 7-8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes of the training, Kevin came over to me and he said, I want a word with you, Pedro. And he nicknamed me Pedro, so I was Peter in Vancouver. Until that morning of training, I'd never thought of anybody calling me Pedro. And he called me Pedro, and he said, you're good, Pedro. He said, Arthur was right. He said, who needs fucking Kenny Dalglish? And at that stage, I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. So, like, obviously I'm second choice to Kenny Dalglish, but I didn't know that until he, like, tells me the story. And he said, like, we did think we were getting Kenny Dalglish, you know, you'll do. And to be fair, he was amazing. And I really mean amazing. He was amazing to all of you. But for me to be able to sit in the same dressing room and on a match day, sit the next seat to him, because 7-8, you know, it was just like, wow, it was like gobsmacking, and like, he's the best football person I've ever met. And I really mean that, so.
We've discussed this many times, whether we've done it at Talkings or whether it's on NUFC Matters or whatever. 83, 84, of course, was my first season. So many great goals from the collective, you, Keegan and Waddle, but what was your favourite goal of that particular season?
Right.
To be fair, honestly, excuse me swearing, ladies. Honestly, it's absolutely unbelievable, and Steve will know this. Like, there's been about 15 fucking shouted out there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know, he was asking me. and I find it, I do, and it's great that everybody's got an opinion, but unfortunately we're not fucking asking you. So it's really hard, and some days I say Portsmouth, some days I say Brighton, and I really mean that, because like, it just depends, you know, who's talking to you about it. You know, like Kevin Keegan, like the Portsmouth one, I thought he'd give me a hospital pass, and I really mean that. Luckily, I managed to duck round the player and get in front of the goal, and then, you know, the best thing about that goal was obviously the fact you scored was brilliant, but that made it 2-0. But in them days, as I said about the electronics sort of boards, in America, Vancouver, where they told you how long was left or substitutions. In them days, there was no boards. It was basically on the referee's thoughts, you know, an extra minute, extra two, maybe somebody's got a cut like Dave McCready in his day. Yeah, yeah, you know, but that was the referee's time. You know, it wasn't like something we ever come to. Anyway, Arthur Cox on 45 minutes used to always go down the tunnel, whether that be at St James's or whether that be at Portsmouth that day, used to always go down the tunnel. But when he went down the tunnel on this day, because that goal was just before half time, it was 1-0. Kevin had scored, and we were winning 1-0. The goalkeeper should have saved it. His shot was fucking awful. So anyway, he passes to me, and then we score a second goal. And then, to be fair, we go into the dressing room, and Arthur Cox never swore like effing, but he would always say bloody. And he would say that, bloody awful. You know, how can we only be beating these 1-0? And so Terry Mack said, Arthur, it's 2-0. Pedro's just scored a wonder goal. And Arthur went, we're playing well now, aren't we? And it was just amazing how we went from there to there. But that's what it was like. You know, we just had special people in that dressing room. And a lot of you will remember Kevin was caretaker manager for one game because Arthur had a migraine problem, and it actually was at Derby. And Arthur missed the game. So we played like a bunch of morons, and I really mean that. We were horrific. But Kevin was in charge, and so you're like, oh, this can't be right. So we come in at half time, and we're 2-0 down, and he's fuming. Kevin's absolutely fuming. So thinking, wow, he's going to be good when he becomes a manager. And so anyway, he's hammering us, and he went, you Geordies, I fucking shit a lot of you. And then he went, not you, Pedro. Wow. I'm thinking, no, Gaffer, you can't say that, you know, like, so you can't batter everybody else and then say I'm really good and that. It was really embarrassing. And for the next few weeks, the lads were taking the piss out of me. Kevin's son, are you? But it's just what it was, you know. But we had a brilliant, like Steve was talking about that year, it was amazing. For me to come back from where I was and to be part of a promotion season that nobody will ever forget, that was around in them days. The kids now obviously wouldn't understand, and I understand why they don't understand. But when I look at the going up tape and all that, yeah, I was speaking to Arthur today. I speak to him every week, and to be fair, I would love to be able to actually physically see him, and I mean that nicely, because he sounds like he did in 1983-84, and I really mean that. So I speak to him every week. He's unbelievable. Really, really is unbelievable.
How old is he now?
83.
Yeah.
The final game, of course, once promotion was secured and Newcastle went up, was an Afida Kev game. You've got a little story from that, because you should have had a special memento when Kevin left in the helicopter.
Yeah. So the helicopter was a brilliant idea, by the way. I don't know whose idea it was, but he wouldn't have got out of that ground other than through the helicopter, and I don't mean that horribly. So the fans wouldn't have been horrible to him, but he'd have been standing there signing autographs, because he never left the room until he did, you know, we obviously did Dunstan with him, and you know, Steve, we were still there 1 o'clock in the morning, because that's what he does. And he always did that, you know, but this, so the ones that are old enough and were lucky enough to be at the game, we drew 2-2 with Liverpool. He gave all that money to the football club. So it was a benefit game for Newcastle, not for Kevin, but obviously it was nice that Liverpool came, him and Terry Mack scored, drew 2-2. And then obviously, we didn't know, and I really mean this, helicopter comes onto the pitch. And to be fair, as I said, it was the only way he was going to get away. And I really mean that, not in a safety way, he wasn't threatened or anything. But the crowds, they were like, well, I didn't want to go home. So anyway, as he gets in the helicopter, and people that were there, he took his shirt off. So he takes his shirt off, and he gives it to a man. And I'm standing next to Connie Wharton by the dugout, and I said to Kenny, look what he's just done. That's typical. You know, he's took his shirt off and he's given it to the fella. And Ken said, well, it's no good to him now, but not in a negative way. He just said, like, and I said, well, yeah, but look, Ken, he doesn't need to do that. You know, like, I don't know who the fella is, but I said he's got a shirt now. So anyway, he goes up in the helicopter, flies to the Gosford Park, you know, and we then, eventually, probably 11:30, something like that, we get to the Gosford Park. And it was in my mind that he'd give this shirt to the fella, and I thought, I've got to go and just say something. And I went over to him and I said, I used to call him Gaffer even then. I said, Gaffer, what you did then, you know, when you got in the helicopter and you took your shirt off and you give it to the fella, thought it was amazing. He went, what do you mean, Pedro? I said, well, when you got in the helicopter, you took your shirt off, you give it to the fella, and he said, what do you mean? I told the fucking fella to give it to you. That is a genuine true story, and that fella has still got that shirt. That is 100% true.
Whenever it comes up on eBay, give Peter a ring, let him know. In the 1985, I mean, John's done a Christmas jumper of it for NUFC Matters. He's got Hawk Now Here on and you reeling away after you completed your hat-trick. We've got to talk about that against Sunderland.
Yeah,
What was it like to score a hat-trick past Sunderland?
well, amazing, obviously, but yeah, you wouldn't believe it, Steve, but on the 1st of January every year, I must get about 30 texts, and I really mean that. I really genuinely mean that. I do. It's like here we go again, another year and another year. And to be fair, it was amazing. So I missed the penalty as well, but you know the good thing is not many people know that. A few in here now know, but no, it was one of them things that you just. There are certain things in life that money can't buy, and like you know. I'm a saddo because I shouldn't tell you, but the football's still in my loft.
Minerva?
Yeah, the good thing is you don't know where I live. So it's in the loft, and to be fair, I occasionally, and I really mean this, but it sounds weird, I blow it up because obviously it's flat. It would be. It was 1985. And so I blow it up and have a little kick about in the loft. It's
brilliant.
No, to be fair, I'm lucky that the loft was all boarded when we moved in. So yeah, I make a bit of noise, but it's no. To be fair, and without being clever about it, it is a special thing, you know. And when Shola, if you remember, Steve, not that long ago in my lifetime. Shola scored 2 very early on, do you remember? Yeah. I was shitting myself. I was absolutely, Shola scoring a hat-trick, not a chance. And because obviously I was the last Geordie, so Kevin Nolan, yes, well, nobody cares about that, but like Shola, I remember sitting in the crowd saying, no. I'm not lying, I was saying that. Don't want him to score a hat-trick. I love him as a person, but I don't want him to score a hat-trick.
I don't want to dwell on you leaving and us building a stand with the money after you left, which was a nightmare for me as a fan, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room. I do want to touch a little bit just on Liverpool, and you had to go through that Hillsborough situation. That must have been awful. Yeah,
it sounds really weird, Steve, and please take it the right way. Mm-hmm. It was something to be proud of in a sense, so you didn't want anybody to lose their life, and you look at the 97th one that sadly lost his life probably 2-3 months ago. It's horrible, really, really horrible. But what that city did as a coming together, the blue and the red, was incredible, I have to say. To be fair to the Evertonians, they were sensational. But it just made you feel amazing in terms of what Anfield did, what the football club have done now, what Sir Kenny rightly done, and it was amazing. I have to say, Kenny was frightening. I really mean frightening. It was amazing. You know, so obviously we're in the dressing room. So I don't know if you remember or if you saw the game, any of you. So I hit the bar just before, not the trouble, we don't call it trouble, but before the disturbance, whatever you want to call it, where they start running on the pitch, whatever. But there's no expectation of any trouble, and I really mean that. So forget that in terms of any trouble. But so I hit the bar, and then the referee, probably less than a minute later, just taps me on the shorts and says, "We're going in." You know, so excuse me, we all go in. And Graham Kelly was the head of the FA then, and obviously he was at the semi-final. And he came in the dressing room, and to be fair to Kenny, he said, "Can we go and help?" You know, and he said, "No, well," he said, "I don't want you to go out, but not in a negative way." He said, "You know, but all the players need to stay fresh, need to be ready. We'll be going on in 10 minutes. So then 10 minutes goes, he comes back in, we'll be going back on in 10, and at 10 to 5, we were still sat in our kit. So this was obviously 3:06, and still in your kit at 10 to 5, you know, and like, And obviously the families were in the players' lounge, didn't know what was going on, and it was horrible. But to be fair to Kenny, so we all went back on the team bus after the game, as normal, back to Liverpool. And then at 8 o'clock the next morning, we all got back on the bus and went back to Sheffield to go to the hospitals and visit all the ones that thankfully were alive. And there was still probably 4 or 5 that were alive at the time and unfortunately lost their lives. But Kenny insisted on doing that. And to be fair, it was, as weird as it sounds, it was something to be nice to be a part of, because if you remember, Trevor Hicks is the one, lost both his daughters. He's the one that everybody sort of can relate to. And it was just incredible, you know, like you go to a football match and you don't expect that to happen. You know, we had all the glory of being in the dressing room, a bus, you know, but they've all made their effort to get there, and sadly, nobody should ever lose their life anyway, but certainly in the football sense.
Yeah, awful to go through that. Yeah, round of applause. They're never forgotten. 1990, my favourite time to be an England fan. And I make no excuse for that. That is my favourite England team of all time. That is the team that should have eclipsed and joined the 1966 World Cup winners. That was the team, the manager. Oh, just gutted for you, Peter. And I bought a lovely bit of memorabilia myself a couple of weeks ago, which is the pendant from the Republic of Ireland game, signed by all the players. And it's a lovely piece, and I'm glad I've got it because I'm a big fan of that team. What was it like to be part of it, and give us a story on Gaza?
Yeah, to be fair, so the first part, Steve, in terms of, without being big-headed, I was lucky to go to 86, and I mean lucky. Ended up playing a few games, you know, hand of God and all that. But then to go in 1990, I felt as though I deserved to be there. Maybe in 86 I was lucky to be there because there were probably better players than me that missed out. And obviously Tony Woodcock would be one, Trevor Francis. They were probably better than me at that time. So I thought in 1990 I was there on merit. And to be fair to Sir Bobby, he treated me like a king. I have to say, he was brilliant to me, absolutely brilliant to me. So just tell you a quick story before we get to that. So in 1986, I go to the World Cup, and then it gets to about, well, the date is February the 17th, 1988. We go to play, in Israel, and he's made a few changes. So he's left a few out. So Brian Robson's injured, no surprise there, but Ray Wilkins was left out in the sense of he was with a group, but he wasn't going to play. Peter Shilton got left out so Chris Woods could make his debut. Mick Harford made his debut. You know, Guy Lineker didn't play, so we're all sat in a room, not quite as big as this, but we're all sat in a room waiting for the team talk, waiting to find out what the team is really. And so Schultz knows he's not playing, Terry Butcher didn't play, you know. Anyway, we knew. So we're all talking, as you do, you know, who's going to be captain? You know, 3 of the 4 people that would have been captain weren't there. And obviously Brian Robson was injured, so basically what we're going to do. So we're all talking about it, and in walks Bobby Robson, and the first thing he said to the whole group of us, he said, "I don't know if you know, lads, but we need a new captain." And we're all going, "Really?" We've just been discussing it for about fucking 20 minutes. but so he come in and he went, "The person that's going to be the captain today is the man that always collects the balls in, always collects the bibs in, always collects the cones in." I'm thinking, fucking hell, that's me. I hope it's not. And to be fair, so he said, it's going to be Peter Beardsley. So if any kid ever doesn't want to pick up a fucking cone or doesn't want to pick up a ball, he's a fucking idiot. So I've got a pennant of that, Steve, in my snooker room, because Bobby Robson, to be fair to him, got all the players to sign it. I didn't know. He got all the players to sign it, and to be fair, as I say, it's hanging in my snooker room. So amazing that he would do that for us. But then, so anyway, we get to the 1990 World Cup, and it's just amazing, really. So as I say, I feel like I deserve to be there. Me and Gary, more Gary than me, we're starting to score goals together. Looks like a proper team. You know, looks as though we should be there. Where obviously Gary deserved to be there in '86. Whether I should have, I'm not sure. But anyway, so anyway, we get to the stage. So I play the first game, and then I get left out, and again, not offended. Manager's choice, you know, left me out, you know, and then they get to the stage where obviously Barnsley, if you remember against Cameroon, just before half time, he does his hamstring. And I'm still not in the team by this stage, so quarter final, still not in the team. And Bobby Robson said, you, Steve McMahon, Steve Bull, Trevor Stephen and Chris Woods, half time, go and warm up. So they had a proper warm up area, imagine the toilets there, they had a proper gym in there at Barley, and go and warm up in there, and then I'll make my decision on who's going to. So anyway, Steve McMahon, who was, in my words, up his own arse. I was at Liverpool with him, but he was like, he gave out he was a hard man, but he was soft as shit. But so anyway, so we go in this room, we go in this gym at Barley, and I said to you, I got left out of the team, so he went, well, Trevor, it won't be you. You can't replace Barnsley. You can't play on the left. He went to Chris Woods. Obviously, you can't. You can't. You're a goalie. You can't. He said, and you've been fucking shit. So to me, so you've been fucking shit. So it won't be you. He said, it's got to be me. And so just then, as he says, it's got to be me, meaning him, the door opens, and Don Howe shouts, "Come on, Pete, you're on." And honestly, it was one of the best things that ever happened in my life. Honestly. So anyway, so I go on, and I do nothing in the game. We end up winning 3-2. And then on the morning of the semi-final, like, Bobby Robson very cleverly took us to a little area where he was sat on a hill, probably above the height of this building, on a hill, and we're at the bottom. Honestly, it was like something out of The Sound of Music. So he's at the fucking top of this hill, and he's shouting down, yeah, I'm going to tell you the team now. And he said, it's quite easy. The first 10, or the 10 that started the game the other day, the one that's missing, as you all know, it's Barnsley, he's injured. And he said, the person that's going to replace him is, and honestly, it was like waiting for the fucking X Factor result. And he went, it's Peter Beardsley. And Steve McMahon went, are you fucking sure? And so Steve McMahon might have been right, but the wrong place. So in the dressing room or in the manager's office, have your opinion. But you do not do that to another player on the morning of a semi-final. And so anyway, play the game, and it goes to penalties, as you know. So I'm talking to Guy Lineker, deciding how big the goalie is, left-handed, right-handed, which way does he dive better, So anyway, we're discussing it. And Bobby Robson comes over and he says to me, do you know what you're going to do? And if you listen to it as I say it, you'll think, what an arsehole. I went, well, hopefully we're going to score. And Gary Lineker looked and thought, can't say that. Well, that's what I think. And so anyway, he said, yeah, good lad. He said, there's 55 million back home watching, don't let me down. So when I was walking up from obviously the halfway line to go and take it, my thoughts weren't of the 55 million, I don't mean that horribly, were my missus. And my missus was in the crowd, and I'm thinking, if I miss, wow, she's going to get battered. So, and I don't mean physically, but they're going to take the piss or whatever. So luckily I scored, but then when Waddler missed, wow. Like, to be fair, he nearly missed the crowd. And I can't criticise him because I've done that myself. I've done that myself at Everton when we lost 1-0 in the 80s. Kevin Richardson scored for Everton. I nearly missed the crowd at Everton. Fucking hell, it was horrendous. It's what I did and what Chris Waddle did, you wouldn't think was humanly possible. But then when we come back, and obviously Steve's talking about Gaza, when we met up for that World Cup, like Bobby Robson was amazing. He was amazing in '86, but in '90, as I keep saying, I felt as though I was part of the group, so I could speak then. Didn't feel intimidated, didn't feel scared. But Sir Bobby was amazing. So anyway, he gets a cake made for Gaza. So Gaza's got the same birthday as my son. And thankfully that's where the similarities end. So, my son's 32 now. So he was 1. So when we were over in Italy for the World Cup, his birthday, he was 1. And Gaza was probably about 1 as well. But so, anyway, Gaza gets a cake. They send out a cake for him. So the wives are over there. And Sandra, as in my wife, had never left Drew. Never left him before in the whole year. You know, just never left him. You know, parents, that's what your job was. And I don't mean to be cheeky or chauvinistic or whatever. So the in-laws were looking after him. And Sandra was over there with all the other wives and whatever. Anyway, so this cake comes out. And it's a lovely cake. And I really mean that. In the shape of a brush. Remember what we call them daft as a brush? Honestly, it was a brush. And on the cake, it had Happy Birthday Gaza. And so he sends the cake back. And everybody knows that Gaza loves a chocolate cake. So what the fuck you doing? Said, and he hadn't been to Italy in that time, so he couldn't speak the language. It was like broken English. Take this cake back. But somehow, this cake comes back 5 minutes later. And now on this cake, it says, Happy Birthday, Gaza and Drew. So he's got my son's name on the cake. Don't know how the fuck he did it, but so we've got all the pictures and all that. And he gave my son his first World Cup shirt from 1990. Wow. Unbelievable. And I really mean that. And the kid is a diamond. So yes, he's done stupid things, but an absolute diamond of a kid. And I really mean that. I love and adore him. So my son is now 32. So for 31 years, Gaza's rang him. And I really mean, rang him, rings him every year. Obviously, for the first 4 years, Drew couldn't fucking speak. Well, now for the last 27, Gaza can't. But to be fair to Gaza, Gaza is a diamond of a kid. And I really mean that. So made mistakes, absolutely. But he would help anybody. And to be fair to him, what a player. What an absolute genius.
Top guy. He's doing all right at the minute as well, which is good. Last 15 minutes then, let's get on to the entertainers. Kevin Keegan comes in, 7 years on a golf course, and then gets asked to manage Newcastle United by the new owners, Sir John Hall, and he's got big plans. And the entertainers is born, and you were asked to come back. What was that like?
Yeah, well, amazing, Steve. So this sounds really big-headed, and probably you all think I am big-headed, but I was the best player at Everton at the time. But they were fucking rubbish. So I was the best player. They even had people like Martin Keown playing for them. That's how fucking bad they were. But anyway, so I was at Everton, and to be fair, Howard Kendall rang me up. So Sandra, as in my missus, was expecting our second child, Stacey, the daughter. So basically, Howard said, come and see me, but come in your time. So when Sandra's all right, so she was only like 3 weeks from having Stacey. Anyway, he said, come and see me. So I went to see him. And he said, I don't know if you know, but I'm going to sell you. I said, you're going to sell me? I said, I'm your fucking best player. He said, well, that's why I'm selling you, because you're the only fuck I can get money off. And this is a true story. So I said, who are you going to try and sign? He said, Les Ferdinand. I said, well, I'd like to fucking play alongside Les. I said, I think I could help him. He said, yeah, but if I fucking buy him, I can't keep you. So anyway, that's what he wanted the money for. So anyway, I said, who's interested? He went, Derby County. I said, fucking Derby County. But to be fair, the only thing in Derby County's favour at the time was Arthur Cox was the manager. So anyway, I was on, what was I on then? So Everton, I was on £5,000 a week. And so Arthur Cox rings me and he said, yeah, I want to come and meet you. So he came to my house in Southport and he said, I want you to come and sign for Derby. I know what you get. I'll give you £6,000 a week. He said, I'll look after you. You'll be all right. He said, what do you think? And I was so hesitant, and I really mean that. So love Arthur, still speak to him as I told you, love him a bit. But I was so hesitant, he went, you're not bothered, are you? You're not coming. He said, you can stay at home, you can do what Kevin did, you can come in on a Tuesday, stay for the rest of the week, go home, come back Tuesday, you can. I said, not really. He went, no, that's all right. And then he said, the only place I'll be happy for you to go now is Newcastle. And he 100% said that. So I don't know if he knew that Kevin was going to be ringing or getting in touch or whatever. Anyway, so I went back to see Howard. Said, I'm not interested, Howard. He went, hang on, I'll ring Newcastle. I went, what do you mean you'll ring Newcastle? He said, Kevin told me to keep him in touch if anything happened. So I never knew this, so you do get tapped up and you do have situations that I didn't have a clue, and I really mean that, so no idea. So anyway, he rings Kevin, but Steve will know, but at Newcastle at that time, they had what they called the bat phone. So they had one phone that in sort of Kevin and Terry's time, one of the phones stayed in England. And the other phone went abroad with whoever went abroad. So if Terry went abroad, he would have the phone. If Kevin went abroad, he would have the phone. But there was a bat phone that stayed in the building where Terry was or Kevin was. So anyway, he rings the bat phone, and Terry answers it. And he says to Terry, I was in the room, he says to Terry, he says, Peter Beardsley's for sale. And I can hear Terry, and anybody can hear Terry when he talks. And I mean that nicely, because he's loud, but he's brilliant. And I really mean that. He's like a superstar. One of the best players I ever played with, loved him. But anyway, so I can hear him, and he said, and so Howard hasn't said anything about money. He said, we want him. He said, I haven't told you how much you want. He said, I don't care, we want him. We'll have him. And so the deal was $1.5 million. And to be fair, I was on my way back to Newcastle. So anyway, I told you what I was getting at Everton. And so Kevin rings me, and he said, I know what you're getting. I know what Derby offered you. We'll give you $4,000 a week. And to be fair, I wasn't motivated by money. Easy to say that. And to be fair, he then said, we'll give you a game of some sort to give you what you should get. But the best thing, and obviously we're missing him tonight in the jungle, but he said, and I use him because I'll explain in a minute. He said, but if we sign a new player and he gets more than you, we'll give you the same. So everybody gets offended when Shearer was coming in, and Ginola and Ferdinand. Look, and bring them in. Go on. But as Kevin said, he said, we always look after you. He said, there's anything you want, forget anybody else, we'll get it for you. And I have to say, that's why I said, and without being cocky or clever, he's God to me. And I really mean that. He's just the best man ever.
So not just once but twice, he gave me personally and other people in the room some of the best years of our life as Newcastle fans, some of the best goals. You almost gave us that elusive trophy, and unfortunately we fell at the final hurdle. Why do you think we didn't win the league that year?
It sounds really weird, Steve, because a lot of people, when you see them in town, and I have to say, obviously you know what I was accused of, but the public, and I really mean that, the public, when I go in town or I go to Morrison's, I'm in Morrison's every week. So, yeah, everybody.
Yeah.
So, everybody has been amazing, but basically we failed, and I don't mean that horribly. I don't blame anybody. It was what it was, you know. We had a way of playing that was a dream to play in. I imagine was a dream to watch, and there was no. People talk about coaches doing this, that, and the other. It's all about good players, and unfortunately we fell at the last hurdle, you know. But we had some unbelievable players, and they're days that you'll never get back. You know, I was talking about Ginola, absolute superstar. Tino, I absolutely loved. You know, love Les, love Al. You know, Coley, Rob Lee, Batty. We just had absolute superstars. You know, and just one of them things. You know, Mark Hottiger I still speak to. Love Mark. He was my favourite right back ever. Don't tell Watto. But he, you know, we just had an unbelievable atmosphere around the place. Arthur was part of that. Terry Mack was part of that. You know, it really was something that will never come again. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody at the club now. You know, money-wise, yes, they'll be able to do it. They'll not be able to create what Kevin had. And I don't mean that nastily. Eddie Howe looks amazing. I have to say, when I look at him smiling, he looks amazing. And I think he'll be brilliant for them going forward. But it'll be hard for him to replicate what Kevin did, because that was special.
When you were up at Gosforth, the rugby club, a few weeks ago, we came up to see you in your element, really. The Peter Beardsley Soccer School was fantastic. Great little idea, great new concept. Is that something you're going to carry forward now, do you think, in the future?
Yeah, to be fair, the kids think it's for their benefit, but it's for mine. No, to be fair, it's what I've always done, Steve. You know, so talking about obviously when I was a kid, 10, 11, kicking the ball about. These kids are like they're hopefully not because of me, but like the next generation of kids that want to be footballers. You know, and the great thing for them is, you know, the facilities. You know, obviously you saw what we had, but just facilities in general for kids now have gone to another level. So great for them, great for the parents. The parents are probably the ones that's got the memories in terms of the entertainers. But when you see some of the kids now, and you know, Steve came up with you, and to have a look, and all about the ball, you know, because if you can't manipulate the ball, I was talking about Paul Dummett, like a long time ago, in terms, it seems like a while ago, like the hour ago, or whatever. Like, they just love kicking the ball about, and that's what you do. Most players in the modern game, in our time, if you like, so in our time you were self-taught, but now there's no excuse because you've got academy coaches. You look at Eddie Howe, and I keep saying I love him, and I do. He brought 5 staff. Like, Kevin would have took Terry and Arthur, but that's it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But now it's a different world. You know, you look at what Ollie had at Man U. You know, it's just a different world now. But the most important thing for me is letting the kids have a ball on the grass and almost teach themselves. You know, you put them in match situations. Can they deal with being put under pressure? You know, can they deal with crowded areas of the pitch? You know, that's the thing that I, as big-headed as it sounds, I thought I could get out of and used to enjoy. You know, when you think you're cornered, or if you like, and then you can manage to get out of it. The noise that this ground in particular generates when that happens was just something that you can't buy. So I keep saying to these kids, your mum can't come. I don't mean to make soccer school. I mean when they be coming to the academies, your mum or dad can't come and say, there's 10,000, look after my boy, get him in your academy. It doesn't work like that. You have to have a talent, you have to have a desire and a hunger, and that's something that can't be false, because eventually you get caught out, you know, and it's a brilliant thing. And for me, we're going to try and do a Christmas one. Going to do one in between the kids break up, I think the 17th. We're going to do one before Christmas, and then one in between Christmas and New Year. So it's all looking good.
How can people find out about that?
To be fair, Steve, it's in the we're in the process at the moment where they're going to Druids Park, or if we can work around the Falcons in terms of their training, because obviously the pitches will be you saw us on the grass pitches.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be, we're going to use the first team Astro on the pitch, because obviously the weather in the winter you can't guarantee. So we have the chance. Druids Park's Astro anyway. But if we can, I'm in talks with Seymour, who obviously runs the Falcons. Their game was meant to be tonight, but they called it off because of obviously the storms and that. They're going to play 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So I'm going to go and watch them tomorrow. You know, it's good. Newcastle's on at lunch. Watch the rugby after that. Happy days, and have a chat with Seymour and then take it forward from there.
Great stuff. Well, we'll plug it. Keep an eye on NUFC Matters on YouTube and on my social media. I'll certainly plug it for you.
To be fair, you did amazing for us, I have to say. You and obviously Steve at the back there, to come and have a look, and it was nice for you to see, you know, the interest, and I really mean that. The people, as big-headed as it sounds, when I walk down the street, nobody ever crosses a road and thinks, oh, I don't want to be anywhere near them. Everybody comes towards me and talks to me and asks me how I am, and I can't thank people enough. I really mean that. So it doesn't matter what people think.
Ladies and gentlemen, there was no man better on the pitch in a black and white shirt, and believe you me, there's no man better off the pitch. Put your hands together for Peter Beardsley.
Thank you. Thank you.